Hey y'all, it's our first car video, and as you can see, we're still in the city because Bear really loves hanging his head out the window. But I wanted to note one thing before we actually departed, which is it is the full moon. What's interesting about the full moon this time around is it's a culmination of everything that's happened in the last 6 months. So it's July, 6 months was starting at the beginning of the year. And really, if we're thinking about this, it has a lot to do with the new administration. Everyone was really flustered, let's just say, getting our shit together. Like, oh my God, waking up to the reality that Trump is president. For a lot of folks, we knew that was a possibility. The Roots of Change Agency literally exists because of January 6th. Hey y'all, this is Sam and Bear, and we're back in the future, and Trump's culmination is very much what we wanted to cover this week. We are really excited to dive into the trip and actually start heading out on our journey that we took starting in July of 2025. And it really illustrates how the Trump regime locked in power, used Project 2025 to get where we are today. I knew that I needed to go on this trip right around that time because I knew that we might not really be able to do these trips in the future. I also knew that a lot of the information that I was going to see on the trip wasn't going to be available anytime soon. So we're going to go to a few places that might not exist by the time that you're going to watch them. And that's heartbreaking to know that our history is being destroyed, but it's also really heartwarming to know that we got to go there and we got to document how people are really telling the true history of the United States and Turtle Island and how we can get out of this current moment. So let's see where we stop this week. Hello, Captain's Log, day 1. Bear is being a happy boy. We are not as far as we would like. And as you can see by the sun, it is lower in the sky than we would like, which means it's later in the evening. As we know, summer, longer days. So it's 6 o'clock and we are just at Los Baños, which is the intersection of the 5 and whatever place that we are at right now. We came through from Gilroy, down San Jose, hit Gilroy, which is famous for their garlic festival and their garlic, hit a few fruit stands, get my peaches down in California, and my weed. I get it all in California, but don't tell Donald Trump because he doesn't like that because California is bad, price is high. Okay, so where we are right now is the San Luis Reservoir. That's where we were. I did not know it at the time, but I now do thanks to this trusty map. So when we were in Needles, California, which is right on the edge of Arizona and California, I picked up this trusty map atlas. It is very beat up because I was flipping through it all throughout this country to make sure we did not get lost. We did a few times. But just to show you where we were on the map, so this is Northern California. There are multiple California pages. I think there are like 5, maybe 7. So this is Northern California. You have Oregon at the top, and you have the Bay Area, San Francisco down here. So we started here in the Bay Area, and we made it all the way onto the Southern California page, and we only made it this far. We did not make it that far, and that was mainly because of planning and all of that, but we stopped in Gilroy, and that was really nice because we got to pick up all of the summer fruit for the season, getting apricots, peaches, cherries. Bear got a bunch of pets. He was very popular at the Gilroy fruit stands, and then we also picked up some elote, some delicious corn, And that ended up being a good thing because when we camped at the San Luis Reservoir, they had a fire ban, so we weren't actually able to cook anything. So having that corn and the snacks were really helpful. But just to show you here on the map, we're going to start talking about the election. And I drove all throughout the Southwest in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and I spent a lot of time up in the Central Valley. Which you can't see all of it because California is so huge, and so it is on both the northern side and the southern side. But this is the bottom of the Central Valley here, and you can see just like the open land where there's all of our farm workers work. A ton of our fruits and vegetables are grown here. They are grown by migrant workers, and they are primarily grown by Latino workers. So we're going to get into that a little bit on Friday in terms of messaging and how Trump was able to put a wedge in the Southwest and use California as a way to build up their base in other parts of the country. And I really want to dig into that because I think it's really important that we talk about Republican messaging, but not in the way that like liberals talk about it. I want to talk about it in a very front-facing view as a human and really dissect what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, what the psychology is behind it, and then how we can counteract that. So that's going to come out on Friday. But in the meantime, we're going to get back to the San Luis Reservoir. So everything is Spanish. Everything is, come on over here, colonial names and all of that, which, we don't really talk about now. We talk so much about like European colonialism. I'm not going to go on that tangent right now. But the tangent I am going to go on is where we are. So you can see here, this is where we are. We are at a national reservoir in California, and we are cruising along. Come on. We found something. We found something. Okay, hold up here, bud. Over here. Right here, just a second. All right. You can eat your meat. As we said, I'm vegan. Bear is not vegan. But what I wanted to talk about here is you can see on the ridgeline where the water used to be. You can see the green and you can see the yellow. It's a very clear line. We're not yet at the green. We're a little bit farther down, but you can see how drought has really affected California. And drought happens. Like we have different droughts on and off, and we've recovered from droughts, but this is so much more than what we typically see. And a lot of this also has to do with water rights. This reservoir is here for a reason. I don't know what that reason is. I have not looked into it just yet, but I will. So I found this water pumping impeller, and we are at the San Luis Reservoir. So I figured some things out on the road. But yeah, so this reservoir does collect rainwater from Northern California, and then it filters down into Southern California and beyond, mostly for homes, farms, for golf courses, and for AI plants. We should ask these questions, like why are all these trucks and cars driving straight through the reservoir? They're driving straight through all of these farms, watching all of these Latino and immigrant workers toil in the sun without much protection, without any actual labor protections, let alone sun protection, climate protection. And we're witnessing this drought as well. And I spoke briefly about this on our first trip about water rights, but they've gotten even worse since October. Bear, what you doing, bub? You sit? Good job. All right. Water rights are very important to Bear because he is diabetic and he has to drink a lot of water. We're seeing a lot of elites, white, wealthy elites, arguing over water rights and how they are going to be driven into Los Angeles and other parts of the country that really shouldn't really be there. You know, Phoenix, we talk about all of these places in the Southwest. They are growing. They are still building and building and building in Phoenix. And we are seeing a rise in AI, which also means a rise in data centers. And all of that has to be cooled off by water. It has to be used power. All of these things are in short supply when we are talking about the climate crisis that is being caused by fossil fuels. Fossil fuels equals AI. AI equals fossil fuels. Plastic equals fossil fuels. Fossil fuels equals plastic. Plastic equals fossil fuels. I could keep going, but all of these things are connected. You know, we talk about the climate crisis and we talk about big tech as if they are separate, but they're not. We also talk about racism and white supremacy as if they are separate from big tech, and they are not. As if they are separate from the climate crisis, and they are not. When we're talking about food sovereignty and immigrants being deported, and now Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get enough farm workers into California because he deported them. And let's even carry that through to why they are there in the first place. Like, we are not providing any support for the people that are feeding this country. Let's just think about that for a second. Like, I worked in the Central Valley. I worked over months, and we won that race. We won that race by 187 votes. And I am so proud of that. We worked so hard for that. But we also have to recognize that the people that are in that district, in the Central Valley, they are being hurt right now. And they're not just being hurt by Trump's policies, they're being hurt by Democratic policies. So when liberals say, I hate when Latinos vote against their interests, I really encourage you to look in the mirror and ask yourself why you are saying that. Have you talked to us? Have you talked to a Latino? Come on. Like, we're not voting against our interests. We are seeing the reality of this country as it is. And we recognize that the two-party system isn't working for anyone, let alone Latinos. So, back to the water rights, back to the farmland, back to all of this. It's all connected. Big tech, farm workers, climate crisis, water rights. It's all connected. So we're going to keep talking about that, but wanted to touch on this because I get very fired up and, you know, I'm white and I'm Latino and I am in both worlds. And it's really hard to be in both worlds. And sometimes it's really hard to be in some certain worlds. But it's a gift because it allows me to understand different perspectives. And so I hope that it helps you open up your perspective as well, because that's what we need to do. We need to see each other. Ubuntu, I am because you are. That's how we grow. That's how we build community. That's how we connect. And that's how we defeat the fascists. And that's day one of Road Trippin' for Change. That is just one small example of what you can expect on the road with Bear and I for the next 60 days. We crisscrossed this country and learned a lot about the deeper history as well as what it's like to be living here in 2025. So that is a great example of the episodes you can expect. On Mondays and Tuesdays, we're going to really focus more on the political and social aspects of this country, the historical pieces, and then on Fridays, really dig more into media and tech. So I'm very excited for Friday to kick off and really talk about messaging. I've got some things I picked up on the road that we're going to talk about and really dig into how I saw Republican messaging on the road and what that means for us now, how we can respond to the ever-increasing ratcheting of the Republican messaging, and how we can break through that noise in this media and tech environment. That's going to be a constant theme throughout this trip. I am a huge media and tech geek. I love film and I love stories. And so we are going to have that throughout this trip. We're going to talk about different film and entertainment and media and how we've all been shaped by stories. And it's the reason I went to school for radio, television, and film and for advertising, because I love stories and I love understanding how stories shape us and stories shape our society. Advertising, as you will see, is very much about stories and about society. And so throughout this trip, we're going to talk about my experience in media and tech. And we're also going to have some fun recommendations for movies and other pieces of entertainment that you can check out. It's really a lot of fun to dig back into how entertainment has shaped us in the past. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Past Sam to give us our first film recommendation. Definitely, there's a lot of politics involved with water rights. If you really want to learn about water rights, I highly suggest Chinatown. It is set actually a little bit south of here in Los Angeles and in the Central Valley. They talk a lot about the reservoirs and water and the politics of water. And they do get into some of the Mexican white folk controversy of that. It stars Jack Nicholson. So it's a really fun movie. It's one of my favorite ones. So I would very much recommend that because it does tell you a lot of like how we got here, and then now as we've reached this kind of peak of the climate crisis, as we are starting to see the actual ramifications of centuries of industrialization. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to look back at that movie and then to look at these signs, and obviously there's a little bit more propaganda here just to be like, oh, it's so wonderful, look at all this cool contraptions that we can do. And this is great. Engineering is so interesting, but let's use it with nature. Let's support nature. We can boost nature. We don't have to combat it. I see so much of this as like highways and how they've cut up California. A lot of that has to do with all this stuff. So, more to come.
Go home, Jake. I'm doing you a favor.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.